You know the song, I Get No Kick from Champagne. But the buzz of the conversation here is absolutely thrilling, and this is what we strive for every year. Two things to be said about the prior panel. Even before it happened, I made a promise to Jennifer Marcus, who is from Jewelers Mutual and deeply involved. Can I not be heard? Can I be heard? Hi guys, bonjour. Ça va? Ça y est? D'accord. Okay. So I made a promise to Emily. No. Emily, I make this promise to you too. I already made it to Jennifer Marcus, that we will chart the progress of the JM SCAD program and have a discussion like this every year. So please, for those of you that are interested in the idea of incubating an initiative to address this, we commit. And I can see other people in the room whom I'm sure would. So this is a beginning, and we have done it with human rights, and we have done it with climate, so please count on us, and let's do this thing. So that's number one. Number two is that this next segment is really a conversation. And what I'm going to say just is that these are two, both Andrew and Megan, Andrew Lamb and Megan Brown, have exhibited at Goldsmiths Fair, which is an extraordinary event that the Goldsmiths Company does every year. And the rest is going to come out in conversation. The notion is British mastery, because the artisanry is absolutely exceptional. Really. I mean, I go weak at the knees. And textile techniques in goldsmithing. The first thing, it's interesting, the two of you, there have been a number of parallels in the evolution of your, I don't want to say careers, let's just say practices. And so what led you, and it's just one question for both of you as you want to answer it, to become a goldsmith, and as importantly, to establish your own practice?
Hi everyone, and thank you, Lisa, for inviting us here for a brilliant program of events in New York City. I initially went to art school, having had a passion for making. I love craft and art, design and technology at school, but I didn't have any knowledge or background in jewellery, and I was very lucky that I chose a 5-day block in the jewellery department. And I think back and I think if I hadn't chosen that 5 days, where would I be now? Certainly not here, because I absolutely fell in love with the subject. There was something about the department, the smell, them working on a certain scale, the general atmosphere in the department, led by the late Dorothy Hogg. And I'd initially gone to study art or I was interested in graphic design. I was maybe going to study fine art, sculpture. I also did tapestry as a short introductory block. But as I said, I'm delighted to have been able to choose that 5-day session and then go on to further specialise in the jewellery department. And I went on to study at the Royal College of Art, as Karen did, and Bishop's Land workshops. And through our conversations with Megan and I've found there's quite a few parallels. We didn't initially choose jewellery necessarily. It kind of found us in a way.
Yeah. So Megan, what about you?
So carrying on from what Andrew's just said, actually I initially started studying fashion design at Edinburgh College of Art. So the same original university, but a different course. And basically, through a year out, after that course, I kind of fell into jewellery. I started, there was a local jeweller in my village, actually, and I learned how to create a piece for myself. And I loved working with the metal and the detail and the craftsmanship and the history of the industry. And I just felt like I really found my medium and the way I wanted to present my work. And then I made a piece for myself, and then I was working in a store at the time, actually, and then someone asked me to make it for them. And so that's kind of like how my story began. Slightly unconventional, and I then went on to training, actually, traditionally in my local goldsmiths. And I trained as a goldsmith for 5 years. So on the bench, going through all the traditional techniques. And this I found really grounding, and it kind of gave me the time to learn the craft really in detail. And then I went on and taught myself brand new techniques of weaving, because my family have a textile mill, and I wanted to bring that into my work. So I started with the craft, actually, and then I ended up developing the creative aspect of my work.
May I ask, what was the piece that was commissioned that you made? What were you wearing, and what was commissioned?
It was a solid silver bangle with stone set. So it was like literally the first piece I ever made. It was what I wanted to make for myself, and I made it. And it was just, so yeah, that was the first ever piece that I made, which was really special that someone loved it that much that they commissioned it, and then, yeah, that's where it started.
Yeah. Just for everybody's reference, the slides that are being shown, excuse me, I still use the word slide, the images that are being shown all correspond to the sort of answers that you're hearing, and are images of Andrew and Megan's both, I hate this word, the J word, journey, and of their work. So something that, you know, I noticed, I mean, I've had the pleasure of interviewing you before, and something that I've noticed about both of your work, which has resonances but is different, is the textile, in some ways, dimensions plural, in your case, Andrew. And I wondered if you would talk about that with regard to your past and what preoccupies you aesthetically.
Or, related to textiles or inspiration?
Well, I mean, you have this whole textile thing.
Okay.
The technique, the vision.
Yeah, I mean, there's, over the course of my studies, the many things I've gone on to do afterwards, I think, yeah, I'll maybe mention a few different factors that have influenced my, I suppose, the path that I've followed. As I said, I don't have any background necessarily in creative industries or goldsmithing, but I was in quite a creative family. My mum was a quilt maker. I was surrounded by boxes of fabrics. She would be embroidering. I'd be, you know, playing with maybe putting paper through the sewing machine when I was growing up. And, you know, so I've had that support and that creative environment, and, you know, a lot of encouragement to then go on and study art and then jewellery.
Shall I add to
Yeah.
Because for our initial conversation with each other, we realized we had so many parallels. Because I was also the same. Like the first piece I actually ever made was the first thing I actually learned how to make was by sewing. So it was my mum and my grandmother. They taught me to embroider, and I actually created like little objects. And that was literally the first thing I ever made. And so now, when I look back, it kind of, my journey into textiles made so much sense, because that was what I connected with making. And so I've brought my love of jewelry and that together. And then I mentioned before that my family have a textile mill. So I've kind of grown up around fabrics, and I think that's bled into all my inspirations and the texture and the flow of all the work.
Yeah, I think also the things that I'm drawn to are often things that have sort of textures or detail within them, you know, not necessarily in precious metal. You know, when I'm looking at jewelry, I love the work of people like Nell Linson, who makes these beautiful paper bracelets, collars that are flexible and, you know, have those textile techniques within them. I had a chance to pop to the Museum of Art and Design, and definitely the pieces I was drawn to. You know, I mean, if you don't know people like Giovanna Carvaia, who works in incredibly fine threads, Stefano Marchetti, you know, there's that repetition within the work, and I think that's what I often am drawn to, you know, that texture, the detail. There was a new artist as well that I spotted. You may know Bo, I've written it down, Bo McCall, known as the Button Man, made this amazing piece using a box of his granny's old buttons that he'd found, and then, you know, makes lots and lots of pieces. And it makes me think of myself being a bit of a hoarder. I've also got boxes of buttons that, you know, came from my late grandmother that I didn't want to be thrown away, and they will come in handy, I'm sure, one day. So.
Well, you know, if you could, I don't know, advance your slide perhaps, or
of course,
is that,
yes.
what is that? Is that a vortex or a Fibonacci in the middle there, the small one?
So this piece here, I think there is an image of this particular one. So we can go backwards. Yes, and
Okay.
Megan can
One of
definitely
the things
talk
about
the piece.
your work that that always comes to mind for me is actually conjuring things like quilts and if what we here call rag rugs, which is not the greatest phraseology, but nonetheless, they're, you know, finished textile pieces that are composed of material that, you know, is remnant in some fashion. But I see both the technique and the visual inspiration. And I know when you both talk about your technique, that's going to come out in Megan's as well. But I just wanted to bring that to the fore with regard to yours. Anyway, so tell us, if you would, describe, because this is actually one of the most compelling things to understand from anyone who makes something, which is, what does your process look like from idea to finished product or finished piece? Question for both of you.
Oh, yes.
So,
I'm happy to start. I suppose the techniques that we're using are ancient. You know, the skill of drawing down wire and working in sort of threads of gold is something that I think we're very much drawn to. I mean, I often start with a small ingot of gold, silver, and it's incredible how you can stretch something, you know, minute into meters and meters of workable metal. It's really quite wild. You know, it's quite hard to tame initially, but you can create control and volume, texture. You know, the thread can be round. It can be stretched into square section, round, oval. You can twist the different cross sections of the wire. So I think, yeah, part of my process is working with the materials. I get a lot of satisfaction, and yeah, I find it quite therapeutic. You might spend days, you know, starting, you know, as I said, with an ingot, or, you know, sometimes it's a family heirloom that someone's given you that you've melted down, and you're able to completely transform that. And I think is one of the things that we're lucky to be able to do in our industry. You know, you can repurpose materials. You can start again if you really need to. You know, if you're careful, nothing's really wasted.
Yeah, because I think so mine and Andrew's work, primarily it's wire that we really create from, and it's the building of wire into the finished piece. And for me, it's also what I find amazing about weaving or creating like layers of wire work is the final design is often created from the process, and I find that really magical, and that the actual finished product sometimes can be an unexpected outcome for me, and it has elements of the work that's really unique. And each time, so like we draw down wire, so like I've recently been developing work where I've just started using square wire instead of round, and that has changed the dimension of the work entirely. And so that's really, really lovely. So just literally from changing one element of the work, which will be a piece of wire, into a different shape or size, and then you're creating that work into the piece. And so for me, often my process is also about creating a sample of texture and textile. So I'll literally weave, yeah, perfect, yeah. I'll literally weave a test piece in different gauges of wire, shape, size, and I'm trying to create a texture I have in my mind. And I'll do multiple developments from that until I'm happy with the actual sample. And then I will bring it into a three-dimensional piece, which often incorporates creating tools, especially for making it, and then also making sure it's like it's got the strength and structurality and how it's going to hold the stones. But yeah.
Something I just wanted to interject, because we are here in the United States, so not everyone is familiar with this, but in the UK there are, if you will, the heritage of guilds, and so the Goldsmiths Company is one. Another one, and obviously there's considerable overlap in some ways, is the Gold and Silver Wire Drawers Guild. And do you want to speak to what that is? Because it's an astonishing recognition of a particular aspect of metal.
So I think both of us were introduced to the wire drawers through, I think they sponsored a category in the Goldsmiths Craft and Design Council Awards, which is an annual competition where designers, folk in the trade, students are encouraged to submit finished pieces, designs for this annual competition. And yet the wire drawers picked up on our work. We both won awards and were invited. They're very much the initial trade is about wire drawing gold covered silver thread to be used in textiles and epaulets, military badges, and I think over the years that kind of has been slightly lost because the processes have changed. That skill is no longer, and so although they had lots and lots of members in the company, there weren't any actual makers or folk in the trade. So definitely over the last, I think maybe 10 or just over 10 years, they've encouraged that reconnection with that craft and those skills.
It's an extraordinary group of people, and a tradition. So Andrew mentioned tapestry, and we are kind of immune to it. But at times when you are confronted in the museum, or if you go to a historic house, chateau, perhaps, and you see a tapestry on the wall with a glint, that glint may be actually metallic thread, and so it was woven into daily life. I mean, not everybody's daily life. Obviously, we have socioeconomic considerations here, but the point is that this kind of combination textile metal was something that you saw on things in many, many, many respects. And they also have a program with the Royal School of Needlework that's quite extraordinary, and obviously that's another trajectory, but point being just to call that out. And I think, you've both been involved with that guild, which marked its 400th anniversary a couple of years ago. So I'm seeing here different samples, and I wonder if you could talk about what's the inspiration and how you did the translation from inspiration into your actuality.
So, I mean, this slide, it reflects a piece that I can show you in a second. But yeah, I wanted to give you a glimpse of, some very early work. I mean, I realized as of September this coming year, it'll have been 30 years since I first entered the jewelry department, picked up a saw, and started to learn the process. But as I mentioned, I also worked I did tapestry at art school, and could have gone in a very different way. But there's always been influences or things that have filtered into my work, even right till over those 30 years. One piece that I loved making was a piece based on my family tartan, the Davison tartan up in the top left, and some working sketches or working through the ideas of making a piece, which resulted in this one here, or this one on the right, in which I created a surface. And lots of influences again, looking at, I love granulation and making a surface using thousands of tiny elements. Now, I'm not very good at granulation, but I reinterpret things often, and this is made up of tiny, I suppose, like little threads or little loops of wire that I spend days preparing, with gold, maybe on one side, silver or platinum. There's white gold in there and 24 karat to create this subtle plaid or tartan effect.
So that's part of your lenticular series, right?
Yeah, from the lenticular series. And again, influences not just textiles. I'm fascinated by optical illusion, the principles of how your eye perceives and sees the world. And so I'm often trying to create things like textiles, shot silk, how it changes and catches the light, and you see different colors on within the yarn. And these pieces completely transform as the wearer moves or the viewer moves from almost white to more intense gold and white gold surfaces.
So, Megan, this image of the ring on the left that we have several views of, one of the things about your work is to me, there's a lot of exploration of dimensionality. So this is folded over. It appears to be kind of an ironic, almost tubular construction at a very intricate weave. And then there's what's in your hand, which is almost like the breath of an angel, and yet it stands out as an object. And I wonder if you'd like to talk about a little bit about that issue in your work.
Well, this piece on the presentation here is actually, I'm really pushing the wires to their limits. So all my work, I generally start out as literally I create a new material. So I create a piece of fabric in the metal. And for this one, I wanted to give it, you're right, like that dimension, that sculptural form, because I love really quite like fluid forms that have that flow within the work, and then the added texture I think is amazing. But so for this one, I actually I wove it and then created it into a tube-like form, and I really, to get it into the ring shape, it was because this is actually platinum and white gold, which is the two different colorations, and you're really pushing the wires to the limit, because actually the wires I've used here are like 0.25 mil, so they're really, really fine, but they're built up on layers, and then forced it into this shape, and then finished it with the sapphire, which is actually where the joint of the piece is. And for me, that I loved. Originally, I thought it would come out slightly. I hadn't realized the scale actually when I created it into a tube, I thought it would be much a smaller piece, but it changes entirely when you shape it like that. And I actually love the fact that because it's really, I'm actually wearing it here as well, so it's because it's so large in scale, the tube, it has this amazing curve that curves inwards on the inside. And so it's really like an exaggerated form. I can show it to people if they would like to see afterwards. But that was like one of those examples of an unexpected outcome, which I loved, and it's even better than I had planned, which is nice. And then the bracelet you mentioned was actually one of my earliest pieces. I think I've got like a fine one. Yeah, that's like the finer version. But I really wanted to, so for me, I wanted to create fabric in metal. So this was the whole reason for this piece was creating the idea of flowing fabric, which literally, I don't know if you can see, but it literally just falls like it is like silk. And for this, I used really, really fine chains, because I thought they would be literally have that movement of threads. So I thought, okay, I'll build up many, many, many chains together, and I'll do a weaving of this. And the finished piece is lovely because it has the movement of the chains entirely from like all different angles, but it also has a feeling of like the coldness of the metal, and it's that dual materiality between metal and textiles is really like created really beautifully within this piece, which I love. And then I wanted to show a slight multicoloration. So I've woven gold and silver together to create a patternation. And that's something I'm really trying to develop within my work is it's almost like a tapestry, so like a piece of art within the weaving, and I want to bring in more drawings and more painterly aspects to my work, which I'm really developing at the moment.
And so both of you clearly really involved with the wire and the metal, if you will, it's foundational, and yet you use stones, for example, Mary and Andrew, you have this absolutely marvelous series that uses discarded cans. And I wonder if you want to speak to that in terms of materials that you use.
So there's a few things that got me to work in this type of work. I mean, there was a lot of chat this morning and yesterday about the price of metal going through the roof. You know, I think when I first started using the first opportunity I got to use gold was when I was a student, supported by I don't think they do it anymore, the Precious Metal Bursary Grant with the Goldsmiths company. It's been a wee bit harder to work in precious metals, and before lockdown I'd already started to experiment in combining precious gold with platinum, silver, gold with things like titanium. And then I think it was during lockdown it was a struggle a wee bit to kind of justify making pieces speculatively and experiment in precious metals or offer work for exhibitions which I knew were going to be entirely online or virtual exhibitions. You know, we've already seen Megan. You know, it's important that you kind of see the work in 3 dimensions, you know, because the movement, the flexibility. So I started experimenting, and these pieces are made from, the first one I made was from a can of Iron Brew, which is a soft drinks can. I titled it Iron Brew. I've actually got a part of a can that's been cut up. It's the Scottish equivalent drink of, I suppose, Coca-Cola. I think it's the only country in the world where a soft drink outsells, or one of the few countries in the world where Iron Brew will outsell Coca-Cola. So I turned that into a thread, and I've got a little spindle here, where I'll spend hours just very finely cutting the thread. And, you know, I suppose it's using the techniques that I've developed using drawing down of wire, and trying to spin something out into something that I could use with different technologies. You can't easily work with aluminium in traditional techniques like bench techniques, where we both trained in like soldering. So I use laser welding, and there's thousands and thousands of tiny joins to hold these pieces together. I mean, I don't want to speak for too long, but the other one that was up on the screen before was a piece. I mean, I'm not going to make any comment about Scottish people being known for liking a beer or two, but I was doing a teaching exchange with someone in a friend, someone's become a friend in China, and he invited me. Well, we've met over the years. I've taught in Beijing, he's taught in Glasgow, and he invited me to make a piece for an exhibition. So I got someone to send over the beer that we enjoyed when we were socializing over very little common language. We're Google translating, but I think this piece is using snow lager from China and Tennent's lager from Scotland. And so I made a piece that kind of, I suppose it's celebrating international connections, and exchange, and that merging of sort of new materials, new techniques, and old sort of skills.
Work is just absolutely beautiful. Megan, I wonder about stones. How do you choose the stones that you work with, and what are you looking for when you pick them?
For me, I'm really drawn to very warm colors, actually almost like metallic colors, I guess. Like for this piece, this is a peach topaz, and it's got that warmth to it, but also I specifically chose a faceted stone for this because I wanted to contrast with the really finite detail of the weaving that I was using. I love the balance of texture and polished, and I think it really brings out the weaving and the detail within it. So for this one, it was this is actually a development of an earlier piece, which is a Bombay ring, which is one of my first, one of my first pieces. Oh, actually, yeah, I can...
Is it back or forward?
On the making one?
Yeah,
one.
there.
So you can see actually the making process for this piece here. So the first two on the left is my earlier Bombay pieces that I created. So those were woven as square weavings, like the third image, and then formed into these very soft, voluminous shapes. And then the last image shows how the development of this, and I wanted to incorporate a stone into the piece because it's like a development from the original. And for this stone, I wanted to see how it would work if the weaving actually held the stone. So I wanted to impact the weaving and actually have it almost, the weaving is the setting for the piece. I think I always try and push it to the limit. So for this one, I created multiple development works for it and multiple samples and tools to create that shape and form. And see, for me, it's like I said earlier, the flow of the weaving and how that changes it, and then with the stones. And then also, I was going to talk, but this piece on the left is one of my newest pieces, which I incorporate stones. And for me, I call this I almost think of the diamonds as diamond threads. So for me, I'm using the stones as another color dimension within the weaving, because I really want to develop the colorways into the work. And for me, I'm using stones for this. So I'm incorporating them in unexpected ways, so they almost create a tapestry within the wires, and it's that balance and fusion of form that I really like. And I'm really loving using the baguettes because they're almost like wires for me.
So I'm going to presage something that's going to come up later and ask you the following. So now, the first time that I had the good fortune to meet you, Andrew, one of the things that had been told me is that you photographed your work every day to see progress.
Okay.
And I think that leads into a really excellent question and something that's a conundrum for great artisanry, which is, so both of you use what we might call woven technique, textile technique, and these can take a very long time to make. You might say longer than if you had the pile of material prior to crafting and the finished work. And so one of the things we're going to talk about later but which is critical for both of you, is how do you think about value in that context? And how do you convey, if you will, when you're conversing with clients, whether they're individual or institutional, in effect, value, as distinct from price?
So, yeah, I think it's tricky. Some people really get it and understand the, I suppose, the time and effort, behind a piece. If it's at Goldsmiths Fair, they can probably
speak a little bit.
If it's at something like Goldsmiths Fair, you have that opportunity to really discuss things. They possibly see your cuts and fingernails and the time and effort that's gone into the piece, and it's evident in the calluses, and certainly in my case. Yes, especially because I'm often working in materials that aren't, I suppose, intrinsically precious, but there's a lot of, many hours, not just in the making of the piece, but sometimes 20 years worth of an experiment that you've picked up a few times, put it down, and then you maybe revisit until you've kind of had that maybe eureka moment to get it to work. I think I'm not quite answering your question.
Well, I was going to add, I think sometimes I find when people see the work initially, and I think especially with your work, they don't understand how it's been made, so they think, oh, it's a beautiful piece in itself. And then when you have that conversation of like how you've actually created it, I think then that really adds then people can understand the value, basically. It's because, for instance, that piece on the right, it could be, these textures. It's how you develop those textures, and it's educating the person in front of you and showing them how you've actually created it and the development of that. And it's that conversation that really gives value, and then it has that connection and that, and the realization also I find is that these pieces are completely unique. Mm-hmm. Often you can't make them again, and it's like a one-off entirely. And then as soon as you have that conversation, people can understand that they've got a piece that has spent a lot of time and development and a lot of thought behind it, and then it's one that won't be made again. That is, for me, is the value in the work.
That goes a bit back to the panel that we had before, which is both seeing value in the craft, but then also communicating to the client, which is itself an art. I've been to class about that at Goldsmiths Center. And do you feel, for example, that the fair gives you a particular opportunity in terms of your work to explain, or I wonder if that's sort of an ideal context for you.
For me personally, especially in the UK, there's no other fair like it, that you can actually have that direct conversation with the person in front of you and with the work as well. So it's the fair is a very unique and special place, and because they actually subsidize the stands as well, so it means that it's affordable to show your work and actually be there in the first place. So for me, it's been part of my journey as a goldsmith from the very beginning. I exhibited my work there the first year that I did these textile pieces, and I've been doing it ever since. And so it's really helped me grow also my business and allow me to get my work in front of people that want to buy it, basically.
And I think to add to that, it's become, I think, more and more important. I've not done the fair for a couple of years, but I've got work in a gallery in Edinburgh, the Scottish Gallery, and I'm represented by Adrian Sassoon, who takes my work to various shows. But it's certainly, I will be back and exhibit at Goldsmiths Fair, because they're in the same way that courses are closing, as brought up in the previous panel. Quite a lot of galleries, certainly in the UK, are no longer. London used to have excellent contemporary jewellery galleries, galleries that would sell work jewellery, metalsmithing, and so there are definitely less outlets. So long may Goldsmiths Fair keep supporting, and as you said, they subsidise. Especially if you're a first-time exhibitor, you have the opportunity to get I think a £3,000 bursary for metal. You get a free stand as well, and I suppose that hooks you in a wee bit. And then the more you do the fair, the more you meet clients, and build those connections with galleries, curators, buyers. But equally, I think I was once asked, Goldsmiths Fair, what do you describe it in 3 words? And I maybe slightly off the cuff said holiday from the workshop, because it's a great time to meet, you're with fellow exhibitors. You absolutely would discuss how, you can work very much on your own. So having a network and folk who are in the same boat is really, really important, and events like this as well, being able to discuss, and not just the topics of making, but the wider topics that have been really important in yesterday's and this morning's discussions.
Do you want to say anything about that?
No, I guess just
You
add
don't
to
have
it.
to.
Yeah. For me, it's like that sense of community. I think you're saying is really special, and you do it every year, and you meet more and more designers, and then more and more come into the fair, and it's an unexpected outcome from the fair, definitely.
I mean, from being on the other side of the case, if you will, I think usually I get behind the case, but I think it's an amazing experience and a wonderful opportunity for everyone, on both sides. So I have a last question, I think, which is, we have a sense of kind of the trajectory of the work, and perhaps the essence of it as now. Do you want to comment on what you're thinking about doing next? With regard to your work, in whatever fashion you wish, whether it's new form, medium, whatever it may be.
Well, for me, I'm really interested in looking at different materials. I really want to incorporate unexpected materials, maybe like steel, titanium, maybe aluminium. But I want to push the practice, and I think it's also, like we were talking earlier, it's showing because it's the craftsmanship and it's the making that is the art in a way. So it's trying to push that and show it in different materials and show what is, and bring in an unexpected outcome. Maybe a steel wires that are woven, which is pretty tricky. I'm starting to work with them, but because of the tension and the form of them, and so developing that with the gold and the diamonds and bringing in a new element of material, I think it would be, for me, I'm very excited about, and that's where I want to push the work, and creating more and more one-of-a-kind, larger-scale works that I can maybe spend longer on and develop into bigger pieces.
Can you show that image of her larger work?
Oh, yeah. One of is it the vase? This is, so I did, as we said earlier, I studied at Bishopsland, which is actually silversmithing, but I see myself, I'm a jeweler, but I love creating objects. And for me, this was an exploration into seeing woven texture on a larger scale. And I really want to push this. It's kind of a passion of mine that is an addition to my work. And I see it as an example of showing what can be possible and then reintroducing that into my jewelry. But for this one, you can see the shape and the form of the work. And I think sometimes on a larger scale, and working with scale actually is really interesting, but you get a different dimension to the work, which is, I think, I'll bring back into the jewelry as well, and pushing, many different concepts. To be honest, I have 101 ideas in the back of my mind, and it's trying to narrow down to one and focus on that one and then develop it. I can imagine you're a bit the same. It's the ideas are never the problem, it's the time it takes to learn the techniques as well and develop the practice and then create the finished piece and show it and everything like that.
Yeah, my situation, I maybe didn't mention, but as well as my own practice, I have a balance, or I'm trying to balance. I teach almost full-time at the Glasgow School of Art, so yeah, time in the workshop's extremely precious. So I've got various projects that I'm working on. I get approached for commissions, and I'm often excited by an open call from a gallery themed exhibition, or a set brief that I would engage with. I'm within the role that I have at Glasgow School of Art, where I'm in 2 research clusters. One titled, I should have mentioned before, Drawing Threads, and we've had some great opportunities. The most recent one was to work with salvaged metal from the spire from a cathedral, which was aluminium, and we were given this and were able to repurpose this and to make I don't have any images of it. It's a wee bit different from the work that I've shown today. I'm also I work with another cluster in the typography case room, and it's really great exploring those connections between modern type and goldsmithing. And that's definitely filtering into my work. But yeah, I hope to be continuing making it. I think our conversation that we had a couple of years ago in London, you did. I didn't know your mother was going to be here, Nancy, but I remembered you.
Yeah, that's my mother.
Yeah, I didn't know, but she popped to mind when you mentioned she was still making, and I suppose for me, if I can have in any ways, if my eyes can still see what I'm working on, and if I can keep going even halfway towards your mother's career, that's would be amazing. So,
Any questions? Percy?
Well, you both do such beautiful and unique work, and I was just so thrilled to hear that teaching is also a big part of your work. So I guess just linking back to the previous conversation about skills and longevity, I was curious if you both have apprentices, if you see yourself sort of having developed this quite unique technique. It's not necessarily your responsibility to be the educators and pass it on, but I hope that in some form the work that you've done to create this niche approach will be passed on, is being passed on.
Well, to flip that question slightly, because I feel like I've got so much to learn already, and I'm actually in a workshop with another maker who I'd say is a master maker. He's in his 80s, and he's trained at like Cartier and does everything by hand, and he's imparting that knowledge to me, which I am loving and soaking up as much as possible and trying to learn all those traditional crafts, because I want to learn that to then, like you say, pass it on to the next generation. So I'm at that in-between spot where I'm trying to learn as much as possible from someone with that experience. And then I think it's also to add to the point, is the jewelry industry, that's like the beautiful aspect of it. It is often a master and their apprentice. And it's that connection, and you learn from one other person, really, because there's so much to learn. And it's that connection and that history of passing down skills. For me, I've always been interested in the traditions of the industry, and that's why I got into it. And so I'm really lucky to be in that situation. And I went out, and I'm lucky to have been able to be in this situation, because that's really what I was hoping for. And I'm at this stage where I'm learning so much. So I hope the industry will keep developing like that, because there are people like me and Tom and Andrew that are really passionate, and we want to keep it alive. So we're doing what we can.
Anybody else? I mean, one of the things I will just comment on is that there are a number of people in the room who are deeply committed to ongoing heritage, and heritage as being a key thread of the future. And, you know, hopefully this tendency, I don't know what I should call it, but that this will be something that will gather steam, and that there might be things coming your way that, for example, you don't even envision now, which is what we all hope, that, you know, serendipity will present us with something wonderful. And I'm so grateful to have had the opportunity to talk with you both about your work. And yes.
I was just going to ask for Andrew, in what way has teaching shaped your own artwork, your own creation, and has it even perhaps made you a better artist?
I mean, when I first got the teaching role at Glasgow School of Art, I'd been teaching various visiting lecturing posts around the UK. I was a technician for a while at the Royal College of Art after graduating. But through teaching, you sometimes have to relearn to then teach it again. So, you've got, especially, I mean, the course is very much balanced between technical skills. It's not a technical course as such. It's within an art school. A lot of the design work is conceptual based. But yeah, I'm very, I'm passionate about making sure things are made extremely well. So yeah, it's how you balance projects so they allow, massive scope for creative potential, yet they're really well made. They can go out and have, hold their own in a gallery or museum. And yeah, I think I'm very fortunate. I work with, over the years, hundreds and hundreds of students who've gone on. I've exhibited with them in the future. After they've graduated, they've gone on to surpass, and maybe go on to teach as well, and that's really rewarding. I'm fortunate to work with great students and amazing colleagues as well at the Glasgow School of Art. So, does that answer your question? Okay.
Anyone else? If not, may I encourage you, please? We're breaking for lunch, which is behind you, and I will bring you food if you wish, but I encourage you to have a look at this really extraordinary work. And it is always a thrill to be able to focus on great work all across the spectrum. And when we have the makers, it is a very privileged moment. So thank you so much. Thrilled to have you.